Here I'm going to show you a couple examples on how to graph exponential functions. Okay. So an exponential function is just that. It's where your variable is up in your exponent. And so here when we graph them, the easiest thing to do is to create yourself just an XY table. So we're going to go ahead and do just that. And so in this case, we've got my XY table, and my Y is equal to 4 to the X. And so when I make XY tables, I always try and put the equation I'm solving for on one side, because that helps me remember which side is my independent function or independent variable. And so here I'm going to go ahead and use my table of values, and I'm going to use the easy 5, which says -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And simply all that you're going to do is you're going to plug them in. So here this is going to be 4 to the -2. We have the negative rule, which says you cannot have a negative power, so we're going to flip it and change the sign. So to do that says that this becomes 1 over 4 squared. We know 4 squared is 16, so this is 1 over 16. We then have -1, so it's the same thing, 4 to the negative first. We're going to apply the negative rule, so 1 over 4 to the first, which is the same as 1/4. We then have 4 to the 0. Now the rule says anything raised to the 0 power automatically comes out as 1. We then have 4 to the first, which is the same as 4. And we have 4 squared, which is going to be 16. Now, in order to graph these, the easiest thing to do is to graph the whole numbers first. And so here we're going to go ahead and do that. So if we come over into the graph, the first thing I have is the point 0, 1. So that goes right here. I then have the point 1, 4. So over 1 up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then of course 2, 16. Now if you see 2, that's going to be like way off my graph, so I'm going to just leave it off. And I'm then going to work my way backwards. So here I've got -1 and 1/4, so I'm pretty close to my x-axis. And then -2 is the 1/16, even closer. So what's happening here is if I connect these dots, you can see we're going to hover really close to the axis, but we are going to shoot up very, very quickly. And so that is your exponential graph. So there's a few things that you can keep in mind when graphing. Okay, and so first things first is that the exponential crosses the y-axis, and we are going to approach the x-axis. Okay. Second thing that we can keep in mind is that if we look at this, we can look at what our function is doing, and in this case this function is increasing. Okay, so here we have that this is increasing. In terms of the domain, my domain here is going to stretch from -infinity to +infinity, so it's all real numbers. But my range, if you look, I'm approaching this x-axis, but I'm never going to cross. So when we look at the range here, well, we are going to go from 0 up to +infinity, because my graph is coming up in the positive direction. But I'm never going to cross this x-axis, so I'm never going to include this negative down here. Okay. So those are kind of all the ideas or whatever that you can use when we have a whole number being graphed. Alright, let's look at this next one here, and we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did. So we're going to go ahead and make an XY table. So we're going to have X and we have Y, And my y this time is going to be 1/3 raised to the x power. And we're going to look and see what happens here. So we're going to use the same -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And we're going to look at what happens when my base is a fraction. Okay, so here we're going to go ahead and start. So this is 1/3 raised to the -2. So here when we do that, what actually happens is we get 1 over my 1/3 squared. So this is going to be the same as 3 squared, which gives me 9. Here we're going to have 1 over 3 to the -1. So another way we can look at it is we're flipping that reciprocal around. So this becomes 3 to the first, which is 3. I then have 1/3 to the 0 power, which is 1. I have 1/3 to the first power, which is 1/3. And I have 1/3 squared, which is 1 over 9. So here this time you can see it's my negative numbers that are the whole numbers and my positive numbers are the fractions. And so what happens in this case is, again, we would start and we have x is 0, y is 1, so it's right here. But here at -1 we're up at 3, so 1, 2, 3. At -2 we're up at 9, so here's 8, so 9 right about here. At 1 we're at 1/3, so here, and then at 2 we're at 1/9. And so before we're going to come ever closer to that x-axis, but it's over here. But what's going to happen on this side is we are going to get ever larger. Okay. Let me just get rid of this right here. Okay, so we're going to get ever larger, and then here what you can see is that I have just simply changed directions. So when we have a fractional base, what happens is essentially we're changing our directions now. Instead of an increasing graph, now we are forever decreasing. So here again, important things to remember is that this graph is decreasing. Again, it has a domain which is all real numbers, and its range in this case is going to still go from 0 to positive infinity, because we're still staying up above in the positive range. We have not gone down into the negative. Okay. So that is, in a nutshell, how you would go about graphing exponential equations. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope this video helps, and I'll see you next time.